Welcome to Squatchin' Holler.
In the mist where the trees lean low, Squatchin' Holler's got a tale to show. Whispers creep like a creature's faint howl. Every shadow's got a secret to growl. Monsters rise where the stories are told. Squatchin' Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say? In the holler, the truth just slips away. Huge footprints fade where the creek runs thin. A lantern sways, let the search begin. Rustling leaves, but there's no one near. Is it the wind or the beast you fear? Every echo's a question, every rustle's a clue. Squatchin' Holler's got its eyes on you. Monsters rise where the stories are torn. Squatchin' Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say?
And now, with your Squatchin' Holler hosts, Roger Williams, Amanda Stowers, and Ashley Range. Remember, this podcast can be downloaded everywhere great podcasts are found. And now the show.
How do we follow that intro?
I know, right? It's like, and we're back.
Yeah. Hey, Amanda, how you doing?
I'm good, Roger. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I've been excited. You know, we've been working hard to bring everybody the first episode of our new show.
I know, like, look at us. We're all like,
I know, right?
Now.
I know. It's green. Thank everybody for coming in.
Green.
So everybody that's never met us before, I'm Roger Williams. We got Amanda Stowers. Ashley has been doing a lot of work this week. She's taken the back, not really a back seat tonight. You won't see her. We'll do a show next week for y'all can get to know all three of us, and we'll tell our stories and you know, I was going, okay, for the first show, what are we going to do? So in that song, it talks about legends. I feel like we got two Bigfoot legends in the studio right now. And
Definitely.
We have Mr. Tim Coonbo Baker and Greg Howse. And y'all strap in because it should be a fun ride. And you got any words before we start, Amanda?
No, I think we just go ahead and bring them on and let's get this show on the road.
All right, here we go. Let's see here. There we go.
Greg.
Hey,
There's
fellas.
also-
How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. I appreciate y'all being here. There's been a lot of people excited. When we can get together and talk on the porch, and it'll last forever. And we've done some of those shows where it took a while to get over them. We're not doing that tonight. We'll spread it out. But Coonbo, I know a lot of people. They can Google your name and find out a little bit about you, but can you give us a little bit of info to the people who've never heard you before about a little bit of your past or history?
All right. I grew up along the Tennessee River in North Alabama on a farm, and I retired a few years ago, and I'm back on my farm now. Saw my first Bigfoot here on this farm when I was 4 years old. And I have seen quite a few here since. I worked for the government for a number of years. Started working for TVA back in '78 after getting out of Auburn, and then later on went to work for a major testing lab that did work for the government, a lot of it for NASA and for the Army Missile Command and other government agencies. Later on, worked for McDonnell Douglas Astronautics, and on the space shuttle program, I manned a console in mission control on 7 missions. I worked in other government facilities on other missions. Held a top secret clearance for 31 years. After the Challenger accident, after about 9 months of building the largest strategic defense initiative payload that ever flew on the shuttle, I moved over and started working mostly on the missile command side of the house. Worked directly for the government as a frontline contractor up until through 1994, and then got out into the real world. And I've traveled around the country. I started seriously researching Bigfoot in 1975 with my friend Jim Hart, who was known through a lot of the Bigfoot world as Bubba or Bubba Gump. And anyway, he was a brilliant fella, and he did a lot of work for, believe it or not, the FBI. He passed away a couple of years ago, and his ashes are spread out here on the farm.
Oh man.
Yeah, and he was that good of a friend. And we used to laugh, you know, a good friend will help you move. A really good friend will help you move a body.
Yep.
and that's a great segue for the guy sitting to your left.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Mr. Howse.
But anyway, I have researched in 43 out of 50 states, actual feet on the ground in the woods, you know, looking for a sign, you know, calling and such as that. I've researched in several in Canada and several foreign countries. I've never found Bigfoot outside the United States. Saying they're not there, but I just haven't stumbled across them. You know,
And countries, what were some of those countries?
Canada, Central America, Africa, several countries in Africa, South Sudan, Rwanda, Uganda. I've talked to folks in Belgium. I have actually, I didn't get to get out and actually do anything in Belgium. I just talked to some folks. Talked to some folks that were from Sweden, and they had some really interesting stories. I'd love to go over there. They got some stuff over there I'm not sure I really want to run into. But anyway,
some good old, deep old world stuff over there for sure.
Yeah, but I've dug around in El Salvador, a little bit of Honduras, a little bit of Costa Rica, some Nicaragua, and everybody had stories, but I never found even the most minuscule amount of sign down there. But there were lots and lots of stories.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew you'd been a lot of places, but I had no idea that you'd been that many. Yeah. That's wild. Greg, you want to follow that?
Man, I'm telling you, he leaves a tall resume to go over, don't he? No, y'all. I was oblivious to these things till about 2000. And, I grew up here in North Alabama, matter of fact, about 50 miles from where Tim lives. And, I grew up on a farm. We had poultry houses and raised cows and goats and, had a lot of dogs. We hunted and fished. Daddy had a commercial fishing license, and we sold fish. Just kind of beat out a living here in North Alabama, and stayed in the woods. I'm talking about we were doing anything from quail hunting to lots of deer hunting, rabbit hunting, just squirrel hunting, any kind of hunting that we could do here in North Alabama, we did it. and we were really, really good at it. And, you know, I tell people, I grew up in the woods, and I'd never encountered anything like I started encountering, you know, around 99 or 2000. And it was just, it had me just stumped. I couldn't figure out what I was dealing with. And it rocked on. And, you know, that was pretty much, at least for me, pre-internet. And, you know, I was trying to research it and trying to get any information that I could on what I may be dealing with. And it went off the chain from there. And it took me 9 years to convince myself 100% of what I was dealing with. And, you know, I started off and I was really confused. And then after a couple of years, the encounters we were having were getting worse, but I couldn't lay eyes on one. I mean, I was having a lot of encounters, and I'm talking about vocals, being paced out of the woods, being, you know, chased out of the woods, being bluff charged, but I couldn't see it. You know, I couldn't lay eyes on it. And I mean, I've had stuff thrown at me, deer stolen that we killed. I mean, not just shoot a deer, couldn't find it, but I'm talking about shoot a deer, walk to it, grab its horns, pick them up, look at it, lay it down, it's totally dead. Leave for 15 minutes and get a vehicle and come back to load it, and the deer was gone. It was no drag marks, no nothing. It would be gone. And, you know, they've stolen 6 from me that way. That, you know, in the last, really about the last 15 years, they've stolen I know they stole at least 6. And that's not counting the few that we would knock down and the deer would run. We'd follow the blood, a really good blood trail. And then you could see where the animal would lay down and look like bled out. I mean, it looked like a gallon of blood. And then it just was gone. You know, I don't even count those. But then in 2009, I finally was able to see one, and I had one heck of a sighting. I mean, it was kind of the sighting that most people dream about, because I was in a vehicle and the thing crossed the highway on me, and I got a really great look at it, and, you know, it was just amazing. And you know, it's like all this stuff I'd been dealing with for 9 years just kind of mustered up and exploded right in front of my eyes. And it kind of went from there. And, you know, here I am 25 years later, and I've had hundreds of encounters because of where I'm at and where these things are. It's just, they're here. And, you know, where I hunt and where I'm at here is there's just, you know, they're here. And that's what you try to explain to people, that we have a lot of encounters because they're here on the place where I do all my stuff. And then I got, by the grace of the good Lord, or stroke of genius or luck or whatever, I got introduced to my compadre out here, and he took me in like a lost puppy. Here I am.
Yeah, and you know, y'all, if the people that don't know yet, we all know. I know Greg really well. I know Coonbo a little bit. He's helped me a lot. Greg's helped me a lot, and I'm gonna tell you something about Greg's place. If I leave at 2:00 in the morning or midnight, I look both ways and say, we're going to the truck. Don't throw anything at us, because you never know what's going to happen down there. Coonbo, you know, I've heard a lot of your stories. I haven't heard probably 10%, but one story that kind of ties some things together or makes these questions come up. The time that you and Mr. Osmer went and you had the flashlight and you had the night vision or whatever. Can you tell folks that story there? I love it.
Yeah, I was also wanting to add to mine that I grew up hunting and fishing like Greg. You know, we you know, we live right here by the river, and I don't live right on the river, but I live right next to it. And anyway, I grew up hunting and fishing. My dad was a foaming at the mouth bird hunter, or in Southern parlance, that's quail hunter.
Yeah,
we bird hunted and dove hunted and duck hunted and squirrel and you know, I rabbit hunted some, and I was a deer hunting, still am sort of a deer hunting fanatic. And But I come down and poach off of Greg periodically when he ain't around.
And that's good friend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good friend. Yeah, I got deer right off my back porch. You know, I can lazy hunt here. You know, we've been watching we just had here the other day and watched a doe feeding out here behind the house for a good part of the day. Yeah, but anyway, myself and my buddy Jimmy Osmer, we used to work together years ago, and lo and behold, after where we worked had folded up and shut down, we never did talk about Bigfoot or Boogers or anything at work, and then we somehow ran into each other later. You'd have to ask Jimmy. I don't remember all the details, but turned out that we met back up through the Bigfoot community, and we both kept looking at, I think I know you, and it turned out that I used to work with Jim, with Jimmy's dad, and quite a bit, and I knew Jimmy, and what was really interesting, we hated some of the same people at work. we got, but, and we
It's always a great way to connect, right?
Yeah, but anyway, there used to be a fish hatchery not too far from here, and I think Greg might even know where it used to be. But it's about halfway in between where Jimmy and I live, and about halfway between us. So we met up one evening and headed out there looking for the place. And neither one of us had been there since we were kids. And my dad took me there, and I think Jimmy's dad had taken him there. But we looked around and we thought we were on to the right place. And we went down a road, and we thought, oh yeah, this is it. And there's a gate. That's where he used to go. And what turned out it wasn't. We found out later. But anyway, we wandered around back in the woods on a gravel road, and ended up going up a steep hill and coming to a gate. And we had finally by this time we had figured out that we couldn't find the old fish hatchery, that we were in the wrong place, but we decided to make the best of it. And this place was quite desolate. And we found a place where there were some like hunting cabins and stuff like that, but nobody was there. And we drove up onto one corner of a square. Actually, it was looked like about 80 acres, but we were at one corner of it. And for y'all folks that don't know how big 80 acres is, it's a quarter mile across, and this is a rectangular 80. It's a quarter mile across, and it's a half a mile long. And we pulled up there, and we sat there at a gate, and we were right beside an empty, like a weekend home or something, somebody's hunting camp or hunting cabin. And we were on a public road, but we were right at the point where it ceased to be public and turned into private. And there was a gate there, a locked gate. And of course, we respect other people's property. We were not going to go onto that property. But we stood there at the gate and we listened for a while to see if we heard anything. And then I decided to do a call. And I did. And did a couple of calls and got an answer from across the field. And, about 440 yards away. Actually, 40 acres is 440 yards on a side, and 80 acres is 440 yards wide and 880 yards long. Anyway, we got an answer from across the field in the wood line on the opposite side of this field. And I answered it back, and it started coming closer. And we started looking over there with thermals. I had both of us had thermals with us, and Jimmy's was quite a bit better than mine. Mine was a cheap, lower end. Greg, what's that brand? I can't remember right now. FLIR is a FLIR brand, which don't buy a cheap FLIR. They're junk. And anyway, his, I don't remember, his is an ATM or a UTM or something. I don't remember the brand name, but it's way, way better than mine. But anyway, we both could see when this Bigfoot came out on the other side of the field from us. In the meantime, looking around, Jimmy spotted one that had sneaked up on us and was right there in the backyard of the hunter's camp that we were right beside.
Oh, wow.
And there was a wood pile back there, and then they had several 55-gallon drums sitting there. And this thing was on its belly, and it was looking it was laying on the ground in between the wood pile and where these drums were. And y'all excuse me, scratching my nose. I got a mustache here. It's tickling.
I'm going to interrupt you there, Mr. Coonbo. Did you say that it was laying on its belly?
Yes. It was laying down. Okay. There was one, and we think it was, we don't think it was an adult. We think it was an older juvenile. But it was about maybe 50 yards from us. And anyway, the adult one that was across the field, it was making some racket, and it was walking across the field towards us. In the meantime, we started hearing another one coming up out of the woods back behind the hunter's camp that we were near. But it was on the other side of the fence from us. The one that was laying there in between the wood pile and the 55-gallon drums was on our side of the fence. There was nothing between us and it but air, and it was about 50 yards away. And but it was just laying still, but we could both clearly see it. And anyway, the one that was coming across the field towards us, there was a big, deep gully, sort of about in the middle of the field between us and that one. And it walked up to the edge of the gully and just stood there, and it hollered a time or two. But in the meantime, we could hear this other one easing up out of out of a big draw that was back behind that camp house. And we started looking over there. I think I spotted it first. I spotted it back in the woods, and it was easing up closer and closer to us. And then Jimmy spotted it. It eventually came right up to the edge of the woods, to the edge of the road, but on the other side of the gate. And it walked out in the woods. It walked out in the road. It was only about maybe 35, 40 yards away from us. And we could clearly see it through both thermals. It was standing right out in the road, in the open. And we were sitting there, and this went on for 4 or 5 minutes, and we decided to light it up with a. We both had pretty powerful lights with us. We decided to light it up. We want to see what it really looked like, and I had my phone there, and my intention was I was going to try to get a picture of it, and Jimmy's thermal doesn't have it doesn't do videos or anything, and my thermal is supposed to do videos, but I've never been able to get it to work right. Like I said, it's a piece of junk. And anyhow, so we turned on our lights. We said, okay, 1, 2, and then we both clicked our lights on, and I was going to try to get a picture of it. And there was nothing there. in front of us.
Wow.
We're like, where did it go? And we're looking around, shining our lights all around, and where'd it go? How did it disappear like that? I held my thermal back up, and it was still there in the thermal. I said, Jimmy, look at your thermal. He looked it up, and he could see it in his. Put it down, you can't see it. And even though we had our lights shining out there, and this went on for several minutes, and we were absolutely dumbfounded. I had heard of stuff like this before, but this is the first time, and I've seen some weird stuff, but this is the first time I had ever seen anything this outlandish.
Right.
That we could clearly see it and make out detail in our thermals. Like I said, it was only about 40 yards away. But we could not see anything in our spotlights. And mine is a rechargeable LED, and it's got a really bright white light. And Jimmy's was a little bit older, and he had more of a yellowish looking light on his light, yellowish colored light, and couldn't see it on either one. And I think I might have even stepped back and clicked on the headlights of my truck, and we couldn't see it. But we were, and this is what's crazy. We were looking at it, then we went back to just looking at it with our thermals, and I was messing around mine trying to get it to at least take a picture with my thermal. And anyway, it started moving back into the woods, and it stepped back into the edge of the woods for a little bit. And all of a sudden I remembered, because a lot of times they'll use one of them to get your attention while the other ones sneak up on you.
Yes.
And suddenly I realized, where's the one out in the field? All right, we looked out there. The one in the field was still there. Where's the one over here beside us? It was gone. We're like, oh crap.
So that moment when you turn that light on and you're expecting to see this thing, that had to be mind twisting. Like what in the world? Wow.
It was, absolutely. I was, like I said, we were both totally dumbfounded. And anyway, we looked back, and the other one was still that we couldn't see with our lights. In the thermal, it was still standing there right off the edge of the road, right in the edge of the wood line. And while we're sitting there looking at it, at this point, the other one that was out in the field had started to move. And I could see both of them in the same field of view, although the one on the other side of the draw out in the field, that gully out in the field, he was real blurry. I couldn't tell much detail. I could see his legs when he was moving. The other one, I could see him good. And that one that was out in the field on the other side of the gully, he starts walking down into the gully at an angle, and he disappeared in it. In the meantime, the one that we couldn't see with the light walks back out into the road, and I'm looking at it. And while we are looking at it, it starts fading out.
Oh.
And it ended up being just an oval shaped, an oblong oval, longer up and down than it was wide, that was just sort of nondescript. You couldn't see any detail. It was just an oval of heat, that showed up on both of our thermals. And then it just went away. And
have you ever seen anything like that?
No, never like that. And now I've had them walk right into a thicket that you couldn't have driven a tank into, and just walk into it and not even rustle a leaf and disappear in there before. Yeah. I've had that happen a few times, but I've never had anything like this that disappeared on a thermal. Never. And it, the thing disappeared, and then all of a sudden we hear very, very heavy footsteps coming up out of the draw back behind that camp, which is where the one that disappeared had originally come from. But we figured out pretty quick that it was the big one that had been on the other side of the gully that had gone down in there and worked its way around and was coming up towards us, and it was coming at a pretty good rate of speed. And when it would come up and top out on that hill there, it would have been less than 50 yards from us, about 40 yards from us back in the woods. We decided it was time to go. So we
sounds like it.
We got in the truck and left, but I've never had anything close to that happen to me, and I've seen lots and lots of animals and boogers and stuff in thermals, and I've never had anything like that happen. And it made me want to go out the next day. I don't know. I don't know. It made me want. I'll tell you what. It made me want to go. Made me want to go out and drop about 10 grand on a really, really super good thermal. That's what you want to do.
Well, y'all have been friends. You and Greg have been friends for a long time, and y'all been out together. Like Greg will tell you, everybody, that he's not a researcher, so to speak. I mean, I'll go up there and I'll nose around in the woods and go down to the river and all this stuff. And Greg's like, I ain't getting out there. And but
I feel you, Greg.
But y'all, both of you guys, have a really good story about being together when do y'all want to tell that? It's kind of a
Jimmy Osborne was there on that one.
Yeah. It boiled down. It was me and my buddy Alan that just passed away. It was me and Alan, and Tim had called me and said, me and Osmer's wanting to go booger, and said, y'all want to go? I said, yeah, look, dude, Al's up here from Birmingham. I said, where are we going? He said, well, let's go. Of course, our booger expedition to start off, we got to find somewhere really good to go eat. So Tim wanted to go to Big Bob Gibson's. We'll give them a plug. Big Bob Gibson's barbecue in Decatur, Alabama. So we met them up there, and we ate barbecue for supper, and we left and hit the woods. And it had come. Look, y'all, when I say it come a storm that day, that evening, like 2 hours before we left out going, there was tornadoes come across North Alabama, and it was blowing trees down, houses away, and everything else. It was bad. I'm talking about like real bad.
Washing out roads and flooding, flash flooding.
Yeah, but we were like the mail service. We were going. They wasn't gonna hold us back, and so we went. And we Tim leads us down, some pretty treacherous roads, and we carried 2 trucks. It was Tim and Jimmy in his truck, and me and Alan in my truck, and we're in both 4-wheel drives, and we go in the middle of nowhere, and I guess it would be north of Decatur, but we go through there, y'all, and look, Tim, not only did he work for NASA and like launch rockets, he drives like he's in a rocket, and we're going around going around these gravel roads like sideways drifting, and we're going around, y'all, and I see Tim, he like scoots over because there's a tree like blowed partially out in the road, and he goes to the right to go around it, and I watched like a culvert. It's like it washed out and it caved off. And his truck couldn't have been 6 months old. And I watched his truck teeter up, and the back tire on the driver's side, I could have walked under it and poked my finger up to touch the tire. And how in the world he didn't? I thought they're dead. They've just rolled his truck. But somehow he puts it back up in the road. And I'm like, I'm on the phone with him, and I'm like, you nearly turned over. I said, would you please stop and let Osmer's rear end release its mouth from the seat, because I'm pretty sure he'd been a hole in the seat. So we nearly turned the truck over. And, so we wind up And but what it was this culvert had washed out, and it was just a little bit of dirt, and it caved off. I mean, how in the world I don't know how he didn't roll his truck. But anyway, Tim leads us around, and us being stubborn, we get to a spot. There's 3 poplar trees had blown across this road, and there's 2 that are about, I don't know, 1.5 feet apart, and these trees are like the size of a 5-gallon bucket, and they're laying totally across this big gravel road, and there's 2 laying real close together, and then it's about 5 or 6 feet or 4 or 5 feet to the other one, and it's complete trees. I mean, now there's really no limbs because the poplars, it's not many limbs till it gets on up pretty high. Mm-hmm. Well, Tim's like, I think we can get over. I said, well, we can. I don't know. So we lock our trucks in low range 4-wheel drive, and if you hit them at an angle, you let like one tire at a time go over them, and we made it across. Now look, it took an act of Congress to do it, but we got on, and we're going down this road. What is it, Tim? A half a mile, 3/4 of a mile to that old abandoned boat launch?
About 3/4 of a mile. Yeah, we get to an old abandoned. Turned out it was an old. I don't know, Greg. Should we give? I don't want to give too much.
Well, let's don't give them those exact details, but let's just say it's an old boat launch.
It's an old boat launch, right?
Yeah. Well, look, y'all, we're on the edge of the Tennessee River. I'm talking about like massive water where we're at, and it's like an old, grown-up parking area that looks like hardly anybody ever uses anymore. And when I say dark, this was like being in a cave 300 feet below the ground. There's no ambient light. There's no nothing. It's black dark. And we get out of the trucks and we let it calm down for a little bit. And we're all standing, within 5 or 6 feet of each other by our trucks. Well, Tim breaks out one of his calls that he does. Didn't really have much reaction. Then he makes another call. No, nothing. And we're sitting there, and it's spooky. I mean, creepy spooky out there. And we're sitting there, kind of whispering and trying to be quiet and listen. Well, he breaks out the old, I call it his demon bugle, his shofar horn, and blows that stupid thing. And y'all, when he blew that thing, he gets out of practice because he don't do it much. So it may sound horrible, but then when he finally hits that one note, and look, I'm a redneck from Alabama. I don't know what a shofar is supposed to sound like, but when he hits that note, it's like the whole world opens up. It's just like everything changes. And when you hear it, it's like, that's what it's supposed to sound like. But he did that, and it just echoed down the river. You could hear it from the other side of the river. You hear it echo back. And then it was like you go 3, 2, 1. And on our side of the river, down from us, I'm going to say it could have been a mile away. There is a most god-awful scream, just a roar. And this thing was not happy at all. And I mean, all 4 of us basically in unison, everybody's head whooped, looking that way. And we were like, Everybody heard that, didn't they? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we gave it a few minutes, and, it got quiet. Well, Tim calls again. Oh, when y'all, I don't mean like 10 minutes later. I mean like a minute and a half later. When he calls this time, that thing gives us the same reply, but it's about half the distance. It's coming, and it's coming hot, and it ain't happy. And I'm sitting here going, let's don't toot the horn anymore, and because this thing ain't happy.
Throw that thing in the river and let's go.
Yeah. Put that demon bugle up. We're done with that. And
you left out what we've been hearing in the background.
Oh yeah. About this time that this is going on, we're hearing back the road that we came in. We're hearing a diesel engine. And this thing it's a 4-wheel drive, like a 3/4 ton Dodge pickup, jacked up with, big, massive tires on it. And you can hear this truck. It's just dogging the engine, just wah, 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 wah. Well, we're trying to listen to that, and we're trying to figure out where this damn demon monster's coming from. And it's like, really? We didn't hear nothing till we get all this, and all this is happening. Well, here's this moron up the road. Well, what I'd finally put together was this idiot's trying to cross those trees that we had crossed. Well,
and he got hung up in them.
Yeah, he got stuck, hung up in them. I reckon you could hear stuff breaking and him popping limbs.
I just picture him teetering on it.
Oh, yeah. Look, look, it gets worse because we're still down there on this middle of nowhere. And, you know, the road going out ain't great because we know we got to cross trees to get out. Well, it sounds like the moron's up there with his truck hung up. And this booger man's over here having a fit. And he's coming in hot. You know, y'all, we was in a bad spot. I mean, this is not good. Well, Tim, goes ahead and gives another old tooty toot. And y'all, this damn thing is he's cut the distance in half again. It's not far. It's close. And when Tim Baker looks around at the crowd and goes, well, we need to leave. There was not nobody in the crowd said, no, man, we're good. Let's just stay. It's just here. No, we loaded up. By the time we got our trucks cranked, Jimmy's in there with Tim and Alan's dove in there with me. I'm done in drive and I'm about to power brake it, spinning tires. We got to go. This thing ain't happy. Y'all, as we head to the edge where the road filters out to leave, there's headlights coming. Well, Tim has to wait. Well, there's this old souped up tweaker looking dude comes flying in there with this old Dodge pickup. It's like more rust than it was paint, but it's jacked up, big tires, roll bar, and a whole shooting match. It's like, dude, move. We got to go. Y'all, look, we like throwing gravel, leaving. Well, dude, I don't know what he was doing. I didn't care. We was leaving.
What he did is he spun his truck around and stopped like he was going to wait for somebody. And we hauled ass and left him there by himself with a royally old booger roaring down on him.
You know, I would have been more worried about him, but I was more worried about me than I was this dude. He was my total stranger. So
which one's worse, the boogers or the tweakers?
Yeah, but look, we got back to those trees, and look, I wasn't real happy that we had to slow down to get over them. But you know, this is 3/4 of a mile or maybe a mile. I'm like, well, okay. Well, Tim's truck, he goes over them a little bit quicker. You know, we kind of got it down pat the way we've done it. Well, he goes over it. Well, he kind of like goes up a little bit, pulls off completely out of the road, kind of in the ditch. Well, I crawl over it in my truck and I pull in behind him. He's like, I think he felt guilty because we left that dude down there. He's like, let's see if we can take a chain and just pull those trees. I said, well, we may can. Well, about this time, you hear this diesel engine. Y'all, it's like turning every how many RPMs it could turn. And this thing is coming. You could hear it sound like, yes, it sounded like a spray of gravel up in the woods. This guy's going so fast. And he comes around the curve and he hits that little straight where we are. Now, our trucks are pulled off, and they're sitting there running with the lights on. Y'all, we backed up like up in against our trucks. This dude hit those trees. I bet he's running 35, 40 miles an hour. This truck, I was waiting on the Dixie horn to blow when the truck went airborne and went over those trees. Y'all, I could have walked over this truck.
He hit the first tree and cleared the other two completely.
Yes.
Cleared. And he was going so fast, he hit the old truck, bounced real big, and he got over in the ditch on the other side of the road, all sideways. He never let up. He kept it nailed. And somehow he straightened it out, got back up on the road, and he never let. And I said, I'm going to catch it, so I'm going to see what he saw. We never got it.
We couldn't catch him.
And hey, I've got my truck will fly. I've got a Chevy Trail Boss with a 6.2 in it. That son is gonna fly. It'll do 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds.
I believe
my
it.
Truck,
we couldn't catch
my truck.
We could.
My truck got My truck's got the 5.7 Hemi in it. We couldn't catch him. No.
Yeah.
And y'all,
But yeah,
we think
Greg,
what happened was that he was sitting there and he said, "Yeah, I ran them off." And about that time, that bad old booger came running out right in his face. And I'd love to know exactly what happened, but
you done woke him up, got him mad, and then now he's got the tweaker down there with him. He ain't a happy booger.
Yeah.
And no. I'm gonna tell y'all, I've only been around Coonbo once when he was driving. We were at the LBL a couple years ago, and we were all camping. And me and my wife turned in and started down in the hollow there, and I saw this black truck come around the curve, and I yelled out, "Coonbo's gonna kill us!" She said, "Who is that?" And I went off in the ditch. I know he don't remember that, but I was laughing because I'd heard these stories, right? And I'm like, "Well, Greg's telling the truth." What do you call it? Skinny pedal down?
Yeah, skinny pedal. I was yelling skinny pedal at somebody this afternoon.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with Greg. Remember that, Greg?
Yeah, he was on the phone. He was dropping about some dude in traffic. He's going, "Skinny pedal, dude, skinny pedal." And I was laughing at him. But
and y'all, before we continue, for all the new people, we take these subjects seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. So y'all, we're
No. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we do. We take the subject serious, but if you can't laugh at yourself and each other, you need to be doing something else.
Y'all, I've been so traumatized by these things. If I couldn't laugh about it, I wouldn't leave the house.
Yeah, and we'll get you on, tell some stories. Each one of you by yourself, and because this is like an introductory type thing, and they have, trust me, the audience, some of they have some stories. So,
matter of fact, I mean, one of the, I don't know, it ain't the last one Tim's seen, but it's been about a year ago. He was sitting right here. Me and him done a podcast, a different podcast. And when he got ready to leave, when he backed up and turned around here at my cabin and started down my driveway, tell him what you saw walk across my drive, Tim.
That was by the time I got my truck turned around and was headed down the hill, and just as my lights were coming over the edge there, a dadgum the booger walked out from between a couple of buildings down there and walked across the road. And Greg's got some neighbors that like to collect a bunch of junk, build it up and sell it, but they had a bunch of washing machines sitting there, and that dude walked right across the road and right in between those washing machines. And I slammed on the brakes and I sort of turned to follow it, and it walked through the washing machines and off into the woods and disappeared. Like it didn't have a care in the world. It couldn't have cared less that I had my headlights on.
Yeah.
And y'all, the area,
we've had them.
The people that don't know, the area they're talking about is Northwest Alabama. Where Bankhead and all that. That's, I won't give any other than that, but that's the region that they're in. So, and you talking about
Greg and I live on opposite sides of Bankhead Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If we go to either one of our houses, we have to drive through the forest. Or drive the long way. And
I'm gonna tell you, we went through there. There's no cell service. If you were wondering why they had two trucks, if a vehicle breaks down or you have trouble, there's no way to call out. So you need at least two vehicles. So
that's right. Yep.
It definitely much better to be safe than sorry, for sure.
Yeah. There's somebody on here named Buttworm. I wonder if that might have been one of Bubba's stepsons. But it reminds me of a joke I played on my boss one day.
Yes.
I had pinched my finger working on some stuff over the weekend. I had a big old Band-Aid on my finger, and my boss had called me in his office talking about something. I walk in there, and it's my boss and his boss in there, and they were asking me some questions about hey, Patrick Noble, I see you down there. And anyway, I got this big bandage on my finger, a little big old Snuffy Smith looking bandage. And anyway, he said, "Is that a lost time accident there?" And I said, "Nah, I was just scratching my butt and a tapeworm bit me." And
Southern humor, y'all. Welcome.
Welcome to Squatchin' Holler, y'all.
He got to laughing so hard he lost his breath. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. And he turned red. He's had tears running down his face. And his boss, the big boss, he says, "Well, you asked him."
I thought you were going to tell the story about when y'all were messing with the equipment that y'all had made, the sound equipment with the frequencies, and you accidentally hit a boss man with the brown note. I didn't know. You remember
Actually, that? The guy that we hit with the brown note, we hit it on purpose. We couldn't stand it.
I was trying to help. I was trying to help you there, Coonbo. That was when you were at NASA.
Yeah, I was working. I was working for the government then. Yeah. We were in a government test lab. There was a particular engineer that everybody despised, and he was bad to come on, walk by somebody's test that was going on and mess with the knobs and change adjustments. So our little team, we decided whenever we saw him in our area that we'd start hitting him with infrasound, make him sick, make him leave, and we got to be pretty good at it. Yeah.
Well, but see that leads into like y'all have tested with sound out in the woods and all that, and and you I know you, I don't know if you talk about it or not here, but you have seen boogers on military bases.
Yes.
And the one you talked about, the thing appeared and they thought it was a human. They had at night, and they went up to run the person off, and you said the bigger, the closer they got, the Humvees looked smaller because this thing was so huge.
Yeah. That was down at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and it was a guy that was a National Guardian that was down there with their summer camp training, and it was a fellow that he was a supervisor that worked. I was his boss, the supervisor that worked for me, and he was a colonel in the National Guard. And they were doing infiltration, exfiltration training and such as that. And they thought that this was somebody trying to sneak up on their command post. Mm-hmm. And they caught him on a thermal. And they got to watching him, and they said, I think that's somebody that's wandered in here off of some. A lot of people don't know this, but Camp Shelby is surrounded by a big national forest. And they every once in a while, hunters or something like that will get out of good. I want to see you up there, Wendell. Back up too. But anyway, they thought maybe it was a hunter or something that had gotten lost. So they sent a couple of guys in a Humvee over there to let him know he's not where he's not supposed to be, and offer him help getting out of there if he needed it. And they were driving up, getting closer and closer to him, and the colonel was watching this at a distance from the command post through a really good military grade night vision scope, and he said he suddenly realized that this thing was way bigger than a normal human, because it was on past the Humvee quite a distance still, and it was much taller than the Humvee. And this is a Humvee that's got a machine gun turret up on top of it. And they hollered at him on the radio and said, "Hey, you need to." And about that time, the guys driving the Humvee had figured out that it wasn't a human, and they got screamed at. And one of the guys freaked and emptied, I think, a couple of magazines of blanks at it. All it did was make it mad. And but yeah, I think he emptied 2 magazines full of blanks at the thing.
Just made it. Yeah. Well, you look. Yeah. Coonbo has helped me. He's a great guy. And when I first started talking to him, the reason I didn't know him, I didn't know about his past and all that, but in a few minutes, he gained my trust because I was telling him something that happened to me and my family. And he may not remember this, but 3 or 4 times he finished my sentence and was like, did this happen? Did it sound like this? And he was right on the money. So he hooked me in like this man is telling the truth. He's a good guy. And so to y'all that don't know him, you can go search his name. There's a lot of things out there with his name on it. Go check it out. But I just want to say that because, you never know who to trust in this. And when you have experiences and stuff, like Greg said, it's nice to have people to talk to and everything. And Coonbo, where I was going with this, you're talking about the guns, don't ever point a gun at one, if you're, unless it's dire.
Don't ever shoot at one, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I've had, we don't have time to go into some of the things that happened to me on here tonight, but y'all, like with Tim, it was a fluke, absolute fluke that I got hooked up with Tim to start with.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty much dealing with this all by my lonesome. It was me and my dad was having most of these encounters because we were hunting over on this piece of property. And, pretty much everything I was going through, Dad was right there with me within 300 yards of me. And a lot of times the booger would come around the field where I was, and then it would go through the old growed up thicket and go around the field where he was. And we were hearing all kind of anything that anybody wants to attribute to a Bigfoot, as far as tree knocks and whoops, and a lot of whoops, and we'd hear a lot of whistles, lots of tree knocks. And it just got worse. But just by sheer happenstance, I had a researcher from Arkansas was just passing through. He was passing through this little town that I live in, and he stopped to get a bite to eat in a little cafe. And he had a hat on it, had Bigfoot on it. And one of the waitresses knew me, and I hunted for her and her husband, and she said something to the guy about his hat. I said, "Do you believe in those things?" He said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I've been researching for like 50 something years." And she said, "Well, you need to talk to a friend of mine." Said he's had some encounters and he thinks that's what it is. Well, they wind up, she gave the guy my number, and his name was Bill White, aka Tal Bronco. And then he contacted me, and Bill met me at my house, and we talked for 4 hours. Well, Bill became a really good friend because he had a lot of answers to a lot of questions I had. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, he told me, he said, "I want you to meet a friend of mine." Said he's from your neck of the woods. Said he doesn't live there anymore. He lives in Missouri, but he grew up there in North Alabama, and he's got a farm. And I really want you to meet him. Well, I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't know. He told me the guy's name, and I'm like, well, all right. He said, "Look, I'm gonna get him to call you." I said, well, okay. So I get a phone call, and we talked for 2.5 hours. And it was Coonbo. I mean, I didn't know who Coonbo was. I'm new at this. I've been at this by myself for several years, and like I said, I was oblivious to who anybody was. And then after about a week, them had contacted me again and invited me to come up to they were having a camp out on his farm. They were going to stay in his grandma's old house, and it was Tim's tight group of buddies that they Bigfooted with. Well, man, I didn't realize I was like getting invited to Elvis's private birthday party. I got to go up there, and man, the thing about it was, I had people like, Troy Allen. I got to meet Troy. I got to meet Cheryl Corntassel. And, I met Nate Boland and Jack Overkirk and Jimmy Osborne and, a few more of the guys. And y'all, everybody welcomed me with open arms. I act like I was a little brother that they just found out about. And, the rest has just been history. And, man, that's been several years ago now. But, the debt of gratitude, like with Coonbo, I mean, I take it for granted because, I talk to him pretty much every day and sometimes multiple times a day. And we don't just talk about Bigfoot. We talk about average life deal, Bigfoot usually gets talked about, but that ain't all we talk about. But, guys, I feel extremely blessed. because I've been just kind of found a niche that I feel, and these guys absolutely took me in like family. I mean, and that's what I like about the Bigfoot community, that the part of it that I'm in, and that's the reason I chose to, when I got the opportunity with Spencer and Misty to go on our own podcast. That's the only reason I done it, because I didn't want to talk to people for a long time, and then I realized that I wasn't helping anybody, me being quiet about it. And I realized that the only way I could help people was to talk to them and tell them what I had experienced, and help people just basically try to give them some answers to some questions they had. So yeah, that's this fella right over here, man. Y'all, he's had my back for several years now, and I guess maybe I've had his. We've seen some exciting stuff.
Yeah,
I just felt like I felt like I was blessed. Well, I was blessed. I mean, my grandfather and my grandmother and one of my great grandmothers started teaching me about these things when I was just a little bitty kid. I mean, I'm talking about I first heard about them, and I wasn't even 3 years old yet. And and my grandmother, taught me all kind of stuff about them. I mean, right here, I'm talking about there's stuff that right here where I'm sitting right now used to be. My grandmother had it's where my grandma, where we'd butcher hogs and scald them and scrape them, and she'd make lye soap, and she had a bunch of pear trees right here, and right out in front of the house, here about 50 yards away, had a bunch of apple trees, and then we had some peach trees, and used to make all kind of stuff. And whenever we would plant a garden, we would plant one here, but then she would send me with a hoe or a little it's a little sharp pointed tool. She'd send me over to the back of the farm and over next to the woods close to the river, and to plant squash and watermelons and cantaloupes and field peas and string beans and all kind of stuff, and I'd say, well, why are we doing this, Granny? Ain't nobody, what are we planting over there? It's for the neighbors. I said, we ain't got any neighbors over. Nobody lives over. Oh, yes, they do. And my dad, growing up, he always made sure in the fence rows that we had persimmon trees and plum trees and crabapple trees and stuff like that growing. And he'd go back over and he'd plant muscadine vines and scuppernong vines and stuff like that back there. And he always, and around some of the edges back where our sawmill used to be, he'd plant apple trees and peach trees and pear trees and stuff. And we planted stuff back there for the Boogers, so they'd leave our stuff alone. And then my grandmother taught me at a young age, what to do if they're trying to get your stuff out of your garden. She'd go to the dadgum drive. We'd go into town, and she'd go to the little dollar store, and she'd buy the cheapest, stinkiest soap that she could find. It was usually, they don't make this anymore, but it's called Cashmere Bouquet. Some older folks may remember it.
It sounds horrible.
You'd buy cases of that stuff.
It sounds rough.
It's Cashmere Bouquet. That was the name of it. And we would bring it out here, and man, I'd have to get out there and rub it on the fence post, on the tree trunks, on the tomato stakes, on the sides of we had a summer, some of these old houses, the old house that was built in 1885, the home place is just right here next to me. But it had we used it for a tool shed, but it was originally called a summer kitchen. But we'd rub it all over that thing and the corners of it. We'd rub it on the outhouse, and I had an outhouse out in the yard. And I was out here one time. I was the oldest grandson, so I was the free slave labor. And I was about 9 years old, and we'd been out here weeding the garden or doing something, and sitting out there. And we'd eaten lunch, and she was washing the dishes, and I was just sitting there at the table there in the kitchen, And we used to laugh later on that my Granny Baker, that they modeled Granny Clampett after my Granny Baker, because she was real feisty and didn't take any crap off anybody or anything. And she was really proud of her figs and her fig preserves and stuff. And she had all her fig bushes growing around the outhouse. Good natural fertilizer. Yeah. So we're sitting there, and she's washing dishes. And when you looked out the kitchen window, look a little bit to the left, and there was the outhouse out there. She's washing dishes, and I'm sitting there. I don't know what I was doing, looking at a comic book or something. And all of a sudden, she's dead gummit like that, and she throws down her dish towel. And she runs over there to the back door, and she grabs a broom out from behind the back door, and out the door she goes, across the road. She goes, you get out of here, you get out, you get, and she's swinging that broom over her head, and she runs up to the outhouse and whop, starts hitting the outhouse with the dadgum broom, and then she runs around behind it. And I'm up looking out the kitchen window, wondering what in the world's wrong with Granny? What's going on? And a dadgum about a 9.5 foot booger comes running out from behind the fig bushes, behind the outhouse, runs over there, and we had a cattle operation out here in this part of the farm then, and all around her yard was a 3 foot hog wire, which is a woven wire fence about 3 foot high, and it had about 3 strands of barbed wire on top of that. So this fence, came up to you about like that. It was over 4.5 feet tall. The fence was. It came up about mid chest on the thing. This thing never broke stride, just right over it. It never broke stride. I mean, and me, if I'd have tried to jump it, I'd have left something hanging on the fence. And but
tangled up in
that thing runs off. Yeah, and it runs off down between the barns. And by golly, we was in the car in the town buying
more
cashmere bouquet, and more soap. And then if that didn't work, she had the nuclear option. She always bought some of this. She'd buy 5 or 6 bottles, sometimes a case, of the old-fashioned Aqua Velva aftershave. And I was out there that afternoon when we got back that afternoon with dadgum Aqua Velva, shaking that stuff all over around the yard along the fence. But they were used to. My grandparents was used to dealing with these things, and my great grandparents, and my great grandmother and great grandfather came from North Carolina out to East Texas by covered wagon in the late 1880s and early 1890s. I mean, people were still moving by covered wagon then, and I heard all about. And I don't research these things. I don't want to know about them. Unfortunately, my wife has seen one, but they used to talk about the little people, and they said that their little people followed them, and from North Carolina, and
wow,
that and that every once in a while there were bad ones and there were good ones. The ones that went with them and followed them were good ones. But they said every once in a while these bad ones would show up, and the good ones would run them off. Now, that's all I know about them. I know they exist because I have an excellent picture of one that Judy Klein, a really good researcher up around Minnesota, Michigan, somewhere up here, got a fantastic picture of one, and she gave me a copy of it, and she sort of like we get some pictures of Bigfoot and Dogman and stuff. She felt eyeballs on her, and just sort of they were moving through the woods. She and several other researchers, and she felt like they were being watched, and she just stepped out of the trail and got her camera and started shooting pictures. And sure enough, in one of them, there's one down in some bunch of brush and vines and things, and it's a brush and tall grass, and it's got his head sticking up. This is what blew my mind when she showed me this. My great grandmother said that they would decorate themselves with foliage and with vines and stuff. The picture that she got, this one's got a piece of honeysuckle across its head, and for camo, and absolutely blew my mind.
And for the new people that have come along, there's a lot of new people. Thank you for coming and checking us out.
Yes, thank you.
I know it's like this in other places, but the Southeast was settled a long time. The Northeast was first, and the Southeast, and you have the Appalachian, area. And when you have trolls, internet trolls, start, you don't have a picture, and you don't have those people. We're way past knowing they exist. We've all had experience. We've all seen families, communities, nearby. The old people here would call them the big monkeys from the 40s and 50s, and you just have to learn to deal with them. Now, I know people want proof and all that, but it's out there, and even if you did show them, like Coonbo said, he said, I haven't casted one track, and I mean, they're not going to believe it. The people that don't want to believe it. Now, when you get now, didn't the non-believers, didn't you have a guy at work that didn't believe it, and you carried him down to your place and scared him?
No, what I did is I carried him to back some years ago. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. There was a place along the Natchez Trace Parkway that we had found, and it's the only place I've ever found like this, where there was an alpha booger down there that you could call, and he would come up in broad daylight and show himself, and he'd yell at you, he'd scream at you, and he had sort of a bad attitude. First time I ran into him, I heard about it, and I went down there to see if I could find him, and I went to where where this guy said that he had encountered the thing. I went down there and I drove up and parked. And one of my rules that I tell anybody that listens to me, when you're out away from your home, always park your vehicle, and unless you're parking in the Walmart parking lot or in front of the Kroger or something. But even then, I try to always, if you're in a wild area or away from civilization, always park your vehicle pointed in the safe and fastest direction out. You never know what's going to happen. And if it's where there's a wild animal, a wild person, you never know. A tornado bearing down on you. You always need to park your vehicle so you can make a fast escape.
Right. And
my dad taught me that from a very young age. And my dad was very, very aware of boogers, but and my dad and I together had several encounters with them, but he would never tell me much about them. He would just, and my mother tried to tell me stuff about them several times, and Dad shushed her up for some reason. But my grandmother and my great grandmother and my grandfather told me a fair amount about them. But anyway, so I had driven into this particular little park there on the Natchez Trace, and I pulled into a tight parking spot. There wasn't much parking there, and I didn't turn around. I really didn't expect anything, and I got out and I made a call. I immediately got an answer. And I started to call again, but it called the second time, and I could tell it was coming to me. But I called it again anyway. And this dude, he was really coming to me. And at that particular location, you were up on a hill, and you could look down on the trace, and he was on the other side of the trace. And I said, well, shoot, I can see him cross right down there when he comes across the trace. What I didn't know there was a big culvert under the trace right there. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have to expose himself. He could get to my side without me knowing it. So I'm standing there, truck's behind me, and I'm standing down there, I'm looking down there, waiting for this thing to cross. And he's screaming, he's getting closer and closer, and he's screaming about every 5-6 seconds. And then it gets quiet. And I said, well, where is he? And all of a sudden he screams behind me. And I whirl around and he's standing. You can see the microwave oven and everything back behind me here. He's closer than that from the front of my truck. And I have to go to him to get to my truck. And he's standing there screaming. And I didn't know for a second what to, and I was the only one there. And this was in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had to go towards it, and I realized that even worse than that, my truck was pointed at him, and I was going to have to juke it around to get it out of there. So I just kept my head down. That's another thing. If you ever have a bad encounter with one, don't look it in the eye. Divert your vision. You look down, and you can talk to them, and most of them understand a fair amount of our language. And I just put my head down. And I don't know if I talked to it or not. I can't remember. Like I said, I didn't know whether to wind my butt or scratch my watch at that point. And anyway, I went towards it, keeping my head down. I got in the truck and I fired up, and it's still standing there screaming about every 10 to 15 seconds. And I back up and I have to pull up, back up, pull up. I got a F-250 Super Duty crew cab, with a 7.2 diesel in it. And it took me about 3 or 4 jukes to get that thing turned around. And just as I finally it's like here, and my truck is back here. And just as I'm finally getting where I can pull out and leave, I don't know where it got, but it bent over and it picked up a stick up off the ground. And when I say stick, I mean this thing was as big around as my arm and about 4.5 feet long. And he picked it up off the ground. I don't know if he brought it with him or what, but he picked it up off the ground. And just as I'm pulling out, that thing rears back and he throws it sidearm. He threw it sidearm. That thing like that. Wham! It hits the right side of my truck, right above the wheel well on the rear, right above the rear wheel well. On the right side, and puts a big dent in it about almost 2 feet long, right where the wheel well comes up, and then it's where the sheet metal comes up, then it turns in a little bit. Right in there, he put a big crimp in the metal. I had not even made the first payment on the truck. And
what's the insurance commercial? We've seen a thing or two, and then Coonbo shows up.
It's interesting something you said, Mr.
And I got out of there, and now, so I get home. My dad was an insurance agent, and I had that truck insured through my dad's company. I said, well, what am I going to do? Here I haven't even made the first payment on this truck, and I got a big old dent in the side of the bed. I thought, I ain't calling my dad. I'm not turning this in. So I came to work the next day, and as soon as I got in the door, I don't want him into my office. Good. Hey man, what happened to your new truck? I says, oh man, I said I backed into something, and he says, well, you need to call dent doctors down in Tupelo. They can come up here and suck that thing out. I said, really? Well, how do they do that? They got this vacuum machine they put on there, suck the dent out, and then they'll heat it up or do something. And man, they do a great job. So I called dent doctors, and they came up and did it right out in the parking lot, and it cost me $700. But they told me to park it out in the sun, in the hot sun, and after about a month or two, you could not see that dent at all. And it was worth it.
So they did a good job then.
They did a fantastic job.
Hey, Roger.
So there was something that you said in that story. Oh, sorry, Greg.
No, go ahead.
As you were saying about that, you said, don't look these things in the eyes. So a random fact about me is I was a veterinary assistant for a while, and I got to go along up where there was a gorilla sanctuary up here that used to be up here in North Georgia.
Yeah.
And one of the very first things that the doctors told me when me and the other technicians who got to go there is whatever you do not look them in the eye. Do not smile.
Yeah.
Because that is a show of aggression to them. You know, you can watch them, you can look down and kind of glance like that, but do not look them directly in the eyes. So whenever you said that, I was like, for all the apers out there, I was like, that kind of correlates. So I thought that was just a little interesting tidbit when you said that. I'm like, huh.
Yeah, and that's that's good information to have. Because you don't, because I have a bad habit of that. Niffy.
I do too, because you know me, I get excited and I start smiling when my teeth show. So I'm like, you'll walk around like that that was before masks were a thing.
Okay.
So what were you gonna say, Greg?
What was you?
She's looking at
what I was going to say, Roger, I don't know how long we're going to be on, but brother, don't forget to mention about next weekend. Not this weekend, but the next.
Yeah. So y'all that are still with us, there's a lot and a lot of people watching. The 16th, 2 Saturdays from now, is the Wild Man Conference. Amanda, did you have that little bit of information I sent you? Did you ever see it? Probably not.
Unfortunately, I didn't. No, it's been lost in.
So it's in
getting ready for this stuff.
Oh, y'all, it's been fun. It's been busy.
Mm-hmm.
So Randy at Hutchins is putting it on. Coonbo's going to be there. He's going to be speaking. He'll get into some a lot of his research and stuff. And Greg's going to be there. Misty's going to be there from Woodwalkers. They're going to have a table set up right beside us. We're going to be there. You're going to have Hellbent, Holler, MK Davis, a bunch of people. I expect it to be a good turnout. But Randy sent this. It's real short. It said, join us for the 3rd annual Tennessee Wildman and Crypticon taking place in McMinnville, Tennessee, Saturday, August 19th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. 9 guest speakers on all manner of strange, paranormal, and supernatural topics, as well as over half a dozen podcasts on hand looking to hear your personal stories. So y'all can look that up. We've got a Facebook page. And I'm excited because, we all we get together some, but it'll be fun talking to you get to meet people and they come up and tell their stories for the first time. That's amazing. And we met Chad and Erica Greg last year when we were there, and they've become part of the family. So y'all y'all be sure and check that out.
One of the things that Greg and I, we've gotten way past the point of trying to prove they exist. We know they exist.
Right.
My motivation now is teaching people, is educating people about these things. And I'm not going around trying to make money off of them, make a living off of them or anything like that, like a lot of folks. I'm just trying to educate people with what I know, what I believe, and and I've got a lot of in the field experience, backing up. But I will say, we're not infallible. We're always open to look at new things, to reevaluate old ideas that we've had about them, and any so-called researcher that's worth his salt has got to be willing to go back and relook at old data and in a new light. And I've had to change my mind about things several times as I have learned more about these creatures and other things that are out there. And but that's most of us that are serious about this, at least the group I run with, we're our motivation is education. Trying to teach people about them. I'm not trying to prove they exist because I already know they exist.
Right.
Been around them.
And all of us sitting here have had either sightings and encounters. You two have had a bunch because of where you live and the research and all that. I've had several things happen. I've seen two, and maybe another one. Amanda's ran in, as her grandma said, ran into the booger when she was younger that lived close to their farm, and so we're not going to be a show that we're not going to try to prove anything, but we'll have people on that will talk about, like Coonbo said, something I thought a long time ago. Some of the weirder stuff, I wouldn't have entertained that, but now that we've had things happen to us, then you're right. You have to back up and say, wait a minute, if that's possible, then yeah. So I appreciate the help you've given me. You may not think it's been much, but you've told me a dozen things that either connected the dots for me or warned or came in handy when something happened. And it's like, when you go through training and you're ready for something, it's like you do it automatically. We've had a couple times where we've done things that especially with the truck pointing out. That's the first thing we do, because that was a good piece of advice. My son and I will get those trucks pointed and and make sure, and we make sure there's two sets of keys too, because if something happens to me,
Yeah.
I need somebody,
Yeah.
But
Don't ever hide your keys somewhere, where you say, all right, I'm going to put the keys over here under this rock. Because let me tell you, folks, when people get scared, they will lock you out of your own vehicle and will not let you in.
Yeah.
And so you keep your keys to your vehicle on your person. And
look, y'all, Coonbo, Greg, and Amanda, we know the people that are sitting here listening to this for the first time, and they're on the fence. They don't know. I know we sound nutty, but that's why I'm doing a show. I started a show to learn. Then you're right, Coonbo. People come to you and ask questions. I don't know everything. I might can point them to somebody, but it's a pleasure to help someone. Yeah, Greg getting to talk about y'all. Greg has a ton of stories, and y'all will hear them. I promise you. You can go to Woodwalkers or whatever, but he'll do it here too, I'm sure. And
Yeah, Roger. I mean, like I said, for me, that's the reason that I started doing the Woodwalkers show with Spencer and Misty was, I realized that how much it helped me, like with Coonbo and Bill White, that I knew that there were people out there that were, wrestling with what they were dealing with and didn't have that person to talk to. And I know how much them talking to me helped me. And man, I've devoted about half of my life to helping people. I've been 16 and a half years. I've been law enforcement, and I've been a volunteer firefighter for about at 20. Done rescue squad and search and rescue in the forest here for almost that long. And I've dedicated a lot of my life to helping people. And I realized that I wasn't helping anybody by not talking about what I'd been through. And I figured out that was a way that I could help people. So, Spencer and Misty approached me with coming on and being a co-host on the Woodwalkers, and shameless plug, it's Woodwalkers with a Z. Y'all check us out. Me and Misty, we're going to be doing a kind of a late night show. It's just, y'all look, some of the people's been worried that we were breaking up the show. That ain't it. We're just adding, it's like Woodwalkers 2.0, but it's going to be not owls. And if you look it up on YouTube, it's not owls with a Z, 1313. That's the way you can find it. We hadn't even done our first show yet, but hopefully maybe tomorrow night. It's more of a laid back show. We'll talk about anything. We'll talk about ghosts, werewolves, vampires, who knows? I mean, we just talk about stuff that we think's interesting. I've not had any encounters, none of that. I mean, I'm a Bigfoot kind of guy, but it's fun to talk about, and we get on there and decompress, y'all. I mean, it's just we've done a few Woodwalkers or a few night owl shows on the Woodwalker channel, but we just branched it out. Going to do a whole separate show, but maybe y'all check us out and maybe we'll get some content on there. But seriously, just check us out.
And I'll tell you with that, they've been doing that for a little while now. They're spinning off. If you think we've been funny, you will bring tissue. You're going to be crying, laughing. They're laid back, and that's the way Amanda and I, and Ashley, that's the way we do things. Is like we always say it all the time. We've got a private chat on Messenger, and the theme is the front porch of an old cabin, because we're just sitting on a cabin porch talking and drinking tea. And when we can have guests like Coonbo and Greg come on, and Coonbo has data, I'm sure, in books, and we can't get to all of that, of course. But I just wanted to introduce you guys to them, and go search their names. And Coonbo, you just did a Flash of Beauty that was a really good, well done. And I was like, man, that's great that we're getting a little recognition down this way, because at one time people didn't think they existed. You had people that didn't think they existed, and then you had some researchers thought they're only in the Pacific Northwest. And then they start hearing about Falk, Arkansas, and other places. Nobody's heard about these little places like over here in Giles County. Here, I've been getting a lot of reports since I went public. I went out on a limb, and I've had people come to me privately sharing stories. And
same with me.
It's humbling a little bit when they send you a message and say thank you for talking about it. It makes me feel better. So I know y'all we're not ending, but if we could talk all night, because that's just how much experience these two guys have. And the stories, I can talk to Coonbo and he can say something. It reminds me of something when I was younger. I'm like, wait a minute. Was that connected to, because that's where I saw the Bigfoot at, and have chickens missing, the garden raided, and all that stuff. So anyway, it's just
we got a couple of good questions that popped up in chat that I've got right here. Let's throw some of them up and see if we can answer some of those. So this commenter asked, what have you changed your mind about? Do what, sir?
I'll tell you first. I'm gonna take that one. Yeah.
All right, go for it.
I did my very first interview and written sighting report back in 1978. I'm doing this a long time, and it was from a family that there was a hunting camp, a nice hunting club that was down the road here, about 5 miles east of me, and there was I did 2 reports, and one of them was from the cook at the hunting camp, and literally about 300 or 400 yards through the woods was this family that lived in that same area. And I did on the same weekend, I did a report from them, and those were the very first 2 reports that I ever did. And this is in 1970. This is in late spring early summer of 78, because I got out of Auburn in, I guess, May of 78. So this is sometime in early summer. So I'm gonna call this one family the Penny family. That was the first one. And what had happened was it happened the previous October, and it was the night of the full moon in October of 77, and they and Miss Penny was sitting there washing dishes, and the kitchen window faced east, and she always liked watching the full moon come up through the trees, out there on the east side of their yard. And her husband worked second shift at the Reynolds aluminum plant just west of here, and so he would leave at around 2:30. I think he worked like 3 to 10 or 3 to 11 or something like that. So he'd always had to work about 2:15, 2:30. So anyway, she'd cooked supper and fed. They got two sons. One of them we called him Burrhead, and that's all. If my life depended on it, I couldn't tell you what his real name is. I was always known as Burrhead. He was the older one, and I'm not going to say the younger son's name, but anyway.
Isn't that always something fun we do down here? Is everybody has a nickname?
Yeah,
Everybody has a
Ain't that
nickname.
something fun we all do down here in the South? Is we all have nicknames for each other.
I got Whitey and Cod and just everybody Bubba and
Coonbo.
Everybody's got a Coonbo and everybody's got a nickname.
I've been called everything.
Yeah, but anyway, so I go there, and what happened is Miss Penny had fed the kids, and she was washing dishes at the kitchen sink, and she was looking out the window, and saw the moon coming up, and then she noticed a little while later she couldn't see the moon, so she leaned up to the window and was looking out the window, where'd the moon go? And all of a sudden, this big face leaned into the window from the other side, and she was like this far apart, nose to nose, with a creature. And she reacts, and she starts going, like this. And she's staggering backwards across the kitchen. The younger son, who at that point he was still in high school. The older son was already out of school and was working for a local company. And anyway, the younger son looks around there to see what his mother's carrying on about, and he sees this thing right up in the window, and he said it was actually looking around through the window into the kitchen, and his eyes were glowing red. It scared him so bad, he jumped up and turned the dinner table over. He was there doing his homework. He turned the table over. He let out a big scream, and his mother was having a fit. He screamed, jumped up, turned the dinner table over. It, wham, hits the floor. Burrhead's out there in the living room watching TV. He's wondering, well, what the heck's going on? He gets up and comes in there. Well, they had been having enough stuff going on, odd things around there, and Miss Penny didn't know about it, but Mr. Penny did. And he had wired up a lighting system. Every corner of the house had multiple sets of floodlights on it. And he had a low voltage relay system, and he had like 4 switches around in different places in the house. You could hit any one of those switches and all of those lights would come on outside. Well, Burrhead he sees the thing still looking in the window, and he had enough sense. He just reached right outside the kitchen door into the hallway and mashed one of those master switches, and all the lights came on. And he said that the thing literally it jerked back, and it looked like that, and it took off running. Well, he ran down the length of the house, and he ran out the front door, and the whole yard's lit up like a football stadium, and the thing's running diagonal across their yard, and ran out into the road and turned, and down the hill it went towards the water. Well, when they were giving the description of it to me and how it looked, they were telling me that the legs looked like that you had stood a dog up on its hind legs. And I wrote it up as a Bigfoot sighting. And I got the same, and the description of the thing wasn't like any Bigfoot that I had ever seen. How its body was made and what his head looked like. And I thought, they didn't know what they were seeing. They were so scared, Right. So I wrote it up like Bigfoot. All right. The next day I go talk to the cook at the hunting camp. I get a same weird description of the thing. But I wrote it up as a Bigfoot sighting. This is in 1978. In 1984, we were working on the very first Department of Defense mission that the space shuttle flew. And we were building some of the major equipment for it down in South Alabama. And we were staying in Troy, Alabama. And we were driving to a place northeast of there, outside of Union Springs, Alabama. That's where this stuff was being built. I had a couple of ladies that worked for me, and they carpooled to work together. Both of them held top secret clearances. We always had a handover meeting between first and we were working 12-hour shifts. We always had a handoff meeting between shifts. At the handoff meeting, these two ladies that lived in Troy and commuted to work up there near, which I also did at that time, they were all really upset. And they were not fit to get out there and work on this equipment. So after the handoff meeting was over and everybody was going their way, so half going home, half going out into the plant, I said, hey, come here. What's the matter? And they didn't want to tell me. And so I said, come on in my office. And I said, look, ladies, I can't let you go out there in this kind of shape. We've either got to get you where you're fit to work, or I'm going to have to send you home. I said, what happened? Well, we don't want to talk about it. And I said, did you have a wreck? No. Did something happen on the way to work? Yeah. And well, while I had been down there in Troy, I had been taking a bunch of, that is a pretty active area down there around Troy, Alabama. And I had taken like 6 or 7 sighting reports while I was, on my off time. And I thought, I wonder if they had a Bigfoot encounter. So I said, wait right here. I went out to my car and I got my ledger book, my log book, and brought it in there. And I opened it up and I just set it down. I said, did something like this happen? And they got to look at it and find one and said, yeah. And the ladies had been crying. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, what happened? We saw a huge werewolf.
Whoa.
And I'd had other people talk about these huge werewolves. That's what they call them. I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. And so they described it, and they said it was so evil that it was trying to suck their souls out of their bodies, is the way they put it. And as they were driving to work, this thing walked up out of a creek bottom onto the shoulder of the road. The lady slammed on the brakes. It was standing there beside a curve sign. And I was later able to, figure out from talking to him, we went back to sight. The thing was about 9 feet tall. I had heard other people talk about dog men and werewolves. I found its tracks. It went straight up a 13-foot embankment in 2 steps. They were very, very smart ladies. At that point, I had to change my mind and realize I knew by this time I had figured out that there were 2 types of boogers in this area. What I call a type 1, which is the Patty type, the Patterson-Gimlin film type, and what I call a type 2, which is the Neanderthal type or the swamp ape type. They're somewhat smaller. Well, suddenly I had to add dog man. This thing I found huge, humongous canine type tracks. It threw me so much, and these ladies gave such perfect descriptions of it, and everything that they said that it did, I found the evidence that it had done just what they said. As far as where it was, how it moved, how it went up that bank on the opposite side of the road like it was nothing. It definitely had digitigrade feet, which are feet like a dog's. Their heel is not on the ground, whereas humans, Bigfoot, and stuff like that have plantigrade feet, which when we're standing up, our heels are on the ground. when we take a step, our heel hits the ground every step. Digitigrade feet, the heel is what we call the hock. It does not touch the ground when a digitigrade creature walks. I suddenly realized that these dogmen / werewolf / whatever the heck they are, that they do exist. I went back to the Penny family and re-interviewed them, and I'll never forget what Burrhead said. Well, hell, we told you what it looked like, and you didn't believe it. And Miss Penny, she got all upset again, and the little brother, he didn't want to talk to me, and but I realized, so I had to go back and change my, hey, Gary Spikes, and so I had to go back and change my very first 2 sighting reports and change them from a Bigfoot sighting report to a Dogman sighting report.
And when did we first hear the term Dogman? Because I know some people used to call them dog-faced boogers, and because is that something?
Well, there is a dog-faced booger. There's a type 3 that are we call dog-faced or baboon-headed. Look up the Beast of 7 Shoots. The Beast of 7 Shoots.
I've heard.
And Shoots is Chupees. Okay. And that was a sighting that's up in Quebec in a provincial park, the 7 Shoots Park. I have found those types in Iowa, Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, numbers of places, but that is a 3rd type of plantigrade booger, Bigfoot type of beast. And
you said there's
yes, go ahead.
4, or you said there's 4 types. Is that your?
No, there's 3 types that I know of. There are 3 types that I know of of booger, Bigfoot type creatures. There's a type 1, the patty type, the type 2, which is the somewhat smaller Neanderthal / skunk ape type, and there's this type 3, which I think there's a possibility it could be what some folks are calling a gugway or a Janosqua or something like that, but they've got like a baboon head on them.
Okay.
They've got they're baboon headed. They got sort of a snout like a baboon, and they are definitely.
Yeah, I'd never heard about those until recently either.
And the type 1s, and when these things move in, the type 1s and type 2s move out. They do not intermingle, and they don't ever, other than one place down in a place in Oklahoma I know of, and a place in Texas that I know of. These things are sort of nomadic. They'll come into an area and stay there for a year or 2 and then go on. And every time they move into an area, the type 1s and type 2s, the normal Bigfoot that we're used to seeing, they leave ahead of time. They don't have anything to do with these other guys. Now, the type, what I call a type 4 or an actual dog man or a werewolf or whatever, an actual canine-based beast. Now, the type 1s and type 2 Bigfoot will hang around where these are. And, there's even people that say they've seen them running together. I don't know about that.
Right.
I haven't personally seen it.
Well, Greg, sorry. I was going to ask Greg.
Go ahead. I'll shut up.
No, you're good. I was just going to ask Greg right quick. The one he saw, the first one on the road there, what type was that one?
Roger, the ones, all 4 of the ones that I've got really, really good looks at, and I told you and I talked today, I've caught glimpses. I've seen parts and pieces of stuff that, that's what it was, but I couldn't see like a real good sighting, but I've had 4. Now, the ones that I've saw here have all been like the top one, like the Patterson, like Patty. I mean, that's the closest I can describe what I've seen. And
Were all of those the same black colored?
Roger,
Real dark?
everything I've seen has been blacker than black. I'm talking
Right.
about I tell people an ink black. It's like it's so black, it's like it absorbs a lot to it.
Right.
Now the one that Alan saw right here at my porch, he was 30 feet away from it, and where he marked it on a tree, that one was it was at least 9 foot, but he said that one was more of a gray color, and he said it had a few spots on it that was like white, be like a little patch of white hair here, and on its arm, and then over here it had 4 or 5 different places, and but it was more of a gray color or dingy gray color, and we actually kind of come up with a theory on what the white spots was. Misty's the one that came up with that. Said, a lot of times you could have a dog that if it got injured, like if it got hurt, something that got cut real bad, a lot of times it would make the hair in that where that injury was, it go white. And that's what we got wondering about that one, if that's what the little spots over it where it was like, he said it would just be like, it'd be like a short line or a round spot. It'd be like a tuft of white hair, just snow white hair out of it. But
I used to see that in horses and llamas and all kinds of stuff at the vet's office that would happen.
Yeah.
You could be shearing them, and all of a sudden there's a big white spot. You're like, oh, old injury.
Yeah.
Greg, the one that crossed the road in front of me right there below your place was gray, if you remember. It was a dingy gray, and old the one we called Odin out here on our farm that we saw a bunch of times. It was gray, whereas all the rest of them I've seen out here were black. And
I meant to ask you today when we was talking, Tim, how long if you hadn't seen Odin in a while, have you?
No, I have not seen Odin since October year before last.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, that's the one that's on Tim's farm that we're pretty sure is blind in one eye, because he's got pictures of it that one eye it'd be red and the other eye would be white, the reflection.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and and they're not shaped the same. I've got a good, fairly close up, zoomed in as best as I could picture of him, and his right eye is definitely it reflects white, and it looks bigger than his left eye, which reflects red, and it's odd shape. The outline of it is funky. It's like his eye's been smashed or something's happened to it, But I've got several good pictures of his eye shine. And Dale Boswell did some really good enhancement on one of my pictures, and you can actually see a little bit of his face, and it looks like he's been hit in the face with something. He's got a big split down right coming across his forehead and coming down the side of his nose, beside his nose.
Do you think he was an older male that was pushed out of a clan or whatever you call them?
That's actually, I think at a young age he got into some kind of a fight, and he was about 9.5 feet tall, but he looked like a Wookiee. He never got real thick through the shaft or chest or wide through the shoulders like most of the big males do. And I saw him a bunch of times over 2 or 3 year time, and he almost always was with juveniles. And we saw him out one time with some juveniles, and they were sneaking up on some deer over here on the back of the farm. And he was teaching them how to hunt. And I think that because of the way he was made, I wondered if he didn't get in a fight when he was young and maybe had his testicles torn off. Right. And so he didn't have that testosterone to mass up and bulk up like a normal one would. But he stayed around with the troop and sort of was a buddy and sort of a teacher to the little ones, because probably you know, 19 times out of 20 or 9 times out of 10, when I saw him, he would always have little ones with him, you know, jiggies.
So he would probably be less
But,
aggressive and more, if that what happened to him.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
Yeah. But our alpha, the alpha that was here then when Odin was here, he got his butt whipped April of last year. He and the alpha of the troop, the next troop east of us, tied up in April, about the time that they start migrating. And there was a really bad fight that I listened to. I sat out on a porch and listened to it for 10, 15 minutes. And
which is interesting because this comment just came in.
I absolutely have heard them fighting, but I've never seen them. I saw two fighting one time at a distance through the woods, and I just got glimpses. But man, they were tearing the dadgum woods up. I mean, tearing them up.
What?
And I mean, they were ripping trees 5-6 inches in diameter out of the ground and throwing them at each other.
Did they sound primate-ish, like when primates get all worked up and stuff? Did it sound like that? Or
yeah, sort of. Yeah, and a lot of roaring, a lot of screaming, a lot of, believe it or not, a lot of chest beating.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard several times. I've heard them make noises like a gorilla cupping their hand and, you know, beating their chest.
Right.
I've heard that numbers of times, and yeah, but you know, it's I know I was up in a deer stand when these two were fighting, probably about 75, 80 yards away from me, through and this was some old cutover that had grown up, and the trees had, you know, the trees had gotten up high enough, they'd killed out most of the briars and the underbrush. And so, you know, even though 80 yards doesn't sound like very much, there was still a lot of thick brush and stuff between me and them. And I just got glimpses of them. And this is in the pre-cell phone days, and I never carried cameras with me when I was deer hunting.
Right.
But you can bet this old fat boy stayed his butt up in that tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did not come down until way after they finished up and left. But
do you have any advice for people? Like, I didn't see the whole question Verax asked earlier. You know, I think he lives with them. Do you have any advice on how, like Greg says, he always tells that he accidentally made peace, and y'all hear this story, I promise you, later, but they were kind of in a standoff, and with him and two other guys, and he did a loud whoop, and as loud as he could, and it's like the thing was disappointing, it was like, oh, and just walked off. So
Yeah.
are they more bluff than anything, or
that's a good question. I've seen some that I believe that if I had made the wrong move, that I wouldn't be here. But I have stopped them charging me several times by just shining a flashlight in their face, you know, a really bright light.
right?
And they slam on the brakes and throw up their arm like that, and they'll scream at you and yell at you. They might, you know, rip a sapling up out of the ground or something like that and sling it in your direction. But I've also, you've heard us talk about AP Road, and Sammy Armstrong and I had held off in broad daylight, held off 3 of them by pointing shotguns at them. They absolutely positively know what firearms are.
100%.
And that's a last resort thing, y'all.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
They were in bad spots when that happened. So
we were in a bad spot. We had gotten my truck. I had driven my truck down a road. We were trying to find the backside of the place where the booger would come across the road and show himself during the daytime. Is what we were doing. And it took us a long time to figure out how to get in there. And Sammy, my buddy Sammy Armstrong, finally figured it out. And the very first time we drove down in there, they had a very bad reaction to that. They did not appreciate us being in their territory. I have an area, and Greg's been in there with me. I have an area here on the farm that my mom used to call the inner sanctum, or the sanctum sanctorum, which is the holy of holies. And during the fall and up until late spring, we try not to go in that area. They have their little ones in there, and they don't appreciate you going in there. Greg and I went in there, and folks here, what, about a year or so, Greg? And it was very obvious that we were not welcome.
Yeah.
Was this
Yeah, you know
daylight
what
or
it is.
dark?
Yeah, this is in the daylight. Yeah.
Daylight. I'm not going in there in the dark for sure.
No, not.
And you said it was your
either.
mama who gave it that name?
My mom, yeah. My mom used to call it the inner sanctum, or the sanctum sanctorum. And that's where we had the worst incident we've ever had out here on the farm that I've ever been, since I've been alive. And the worst I've ever heard of happened because when we had our sawmill, we had an order from there. There used to be a big custom furniture company up outside of Nashville called Dixon Furniture. They made really high grade custom furniture, and we cut furniture grade hardwood to order, and we had an order for I'm too young to remember for sure, but it was some out on that area. There were remains of old chestnut trees that had died during the chestnut blight that we were still cutting up. And there were a bunch of those out on that ridge. And there's a bunch of hickory, large hickories. There's a bunch of huge white oaks, huge red oaks, and even more huge chestnut oaks out there. And I know that we had an order, and they went out on that ridge cutting trees. And I don't know what they did, the folks that were running our sawmill that did that, but they pissed them off. And they came up here that night, and they were right out here, literally about 75 feet from where I'm sitting. And they were screaming and yelling. And the folks that were running the sawmill that went in there that got them mad, they lived right across over here where my sister's place is now. And they had 7 coon hounds, and these are rough, gamey old dogs, old plot hounds and black and tans. They had a couple of Catahoulas, and these are rough old dogs. I mean, gamey old dogs. And that booger came up and started screaming right out here and trying to get a gate open. And all those coon hounds came roaring out from under the porch and off the porch, running over there after that booger. And now this is back in the days before we had air conditioning, and I'm laying in my bed, I'm not quite 3 years old, but I still remember this vividly. And I'm laying in the bed with the window open. We got an attic fan going, drawing the night air in to help keep the place cool. And you hear all these dogs going crazy. And we'd been hearing that booger screaming and yelling for a couple of hours, actually longer than that. At least probably a couple, maybe 2.5 hours. He'd been screaming and raising Cain and slowly getting closer and closer. And finally it gets to where this gate is out there, and it was messing with the gate and rattling it, making a bunch of noise. And that's when the dogs went crazy and went running out there. And you hear all this god-awful fight, and the boogers roaring, and the dogs are, fighting. And all of a sudden you started hearing, right in the middle of all that, you started hearing dogs, you hear dogs screaming in pain. And it got awful. And then I heard my grandfather start shooting his 30-30 out through the trees. through the tree tops because you could hear the bullets going ricocheting off, out through the air. And he wasn't shooting at the booger. He was being careful not to hit it, but he was shooting a gun trying to scare it away.
Right.
And when that started, my dad jumped out of the bed and grabbed he always kept a Browning A5 loaded with buckshot and slugs behind the door of the bedroom. He grabbed that and a big old Eveready flashlight and goes tearing out, jumps in the truck, hauls butt over there. And we can still hear a dog, out there, arr, 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 like that. And I heard Daddy shooting. He put that dog out of its misery.
Yeah.
But we went back over there the next day. We heard a bunch of racket during the night. And that family that ran the sawmill that had been back over there cutting wood, they packed up in the middle of the night and left, moved out.
Wow.
And they had a nice big, we had a nice big 2-story house over there that, that my dad rented out. And that's where they were living. And they packed up and moved in the middle of the night. And there was one dog left still alive. It had killed 6 of the 7. Wow. And there were literally pieces and parts of the dog all over the place. I'm talking about front shoulder, a whole front leg laying there just on the ground, a body of a dog with, there'd be a head laying over here. The trunk of the dog just twisted. And I can show you pictures of coyotes that others have killed that have been done that way. And it's just pieces of dogs laying in about a 50-yard circle around where this happened. And my dad, real fast, he took me back home and wouldn't let me come out. And they got over and cleaned up everything. But that was the worst incident that's ever happened here on the farm. Is when they went over there and they what do they call they violated the sanctum sanctorum.
Right.
And don't know what they did. Don't know if they went in there and somebody shot at one of them or don't know what they did, but they got the boogers majorly pissed off. And
that's something you don't.
Some revenge.
Real quick, we made one mad, and when this thing growled and I heard the volume of air come out of the nostrils, I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my God, this thing is just out of sight, pacing. I called Greg. I said, do they pace in a circle? This thing is mumbling and pacing in a circle and throwing big rocks, and I can hear it, slapping trees and limbs. And but when it finally we weren't responding like I guess it wanted. And there was a little one screaming off in the distance. We got all that on audio, video. But when it did that frustrated, mad, and the Coonbo, I've told Greg several times, I have my son with me, and that's terrifying. When they're mad, luckily I haven't. There's one you were talking about, the beating of the chest. Greg can tell you, my son on the southern end of the county where my son hunts, and I do a little bit, he called me and I told him to call Greg because he was laying on the ground he's hunting, and he heard that beating, thumping, but it said it reverberated. I said, call Greg. I don't know. And Greg said you remember that phone call?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Man, these things, I've had them just like what you're talking about. I've had them a bunch of times come in and be like upset because I was in there hunting. And, sometimes they would be belligerent, sometimes they wouldn't. But, man, I've had them bluff charge me, run up, breaking limbs and breaking trees and run up. And
Greg's had them blow their nose on his beard.
Just about. I mean, that's about right. I mean, I've had them run up and stop close enough that it was shaking the ground I was standing on. Their footfalls. It was like being in a pasture and horse or a cow run by, and you could feel the ground jar.
Mm-hmm.
I've had them run that close to me a bunch of different times, and these things would be in the thicket, and it was like they were walking, just stomping, just like they was either going back and forth or just kind of like small, like oval circles, and just annihilating everything around them. It was like they was uprooting saplings, breaking stuff off, And I mean, it sounded like tree limbs or trees. It sounded like rifle shots going off when they'd break them, and they'd be grumbling, huffing, growling, and just grumbling. And I've had them, it sounded like a King Kong movie where it just be like blah 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 blah, blah. And you'd hear just and it'd just get worse, and it'd just pound its chest, and then it would stomp the ground, and it'd break stuff. And this would go on, 10 minutes. And I mean, it's like, I'm standing here with a rifle going, I've got to get out of here. This thing's mad. I've got to leave, and you're scared to move. And then it's dawning on you that one's got my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the rest of them at? You're on a swivel looking around the field, and you're trying to get to your vehicle to leave. And I've had them get between me and my truck, cut me off being able to leave. That's when it got real bad. I told people, I said, I've heard these things scream. And I've told y'all have heard me talk about it, but the bellow, roar, scream, howl, it started off real low, deep sound and ramped all the way up into the highest pitched scream you can imagine on one breath of air that lasted forever. And it was the volume. It was the volume of standing like you're facing a train horn and a conductor holding the horn down. I mean, it was hurting my eyes, and part of that pitch during that sound would blur my vision. It was like it would vibrate my eyeballs, and my vision would blur. And then it would, it'd be like I could see fine, and my vision would get blurry for 3 or 4 seconds. And as the sound kept going, my vision would clear back up. I mean, it's you can't explain it to anybody that's not witnessed some of the things that people like us have seen. You can't do it justice. There's no way to put it in words.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
Amanda,
Actually, when they're doing some of these screams or blasting you really hard with infrasound, one of the frequencies that they pass through is the resonant frequency of your eyeballs. We've had a good researcher friend of ours got hit by this researching over there in Georgia, not very far from you, Amanda.
Interesting.
And it was so strong it detached his retina.
Oh my gosh.
He's blind in one eye. Yeah.
And Amanda got knocked down by a scream, didn't you? Basically,
more or less. Yeah, I was running away so fast. I can't remember honestly if I tripped or just lost my footing. But in the moment of that, half tumble, half was when the roar hit me, but it was from behind. And it was interesting how you said that there, Greg, because what I distinctly remember about the roar that hit me is it started out really low and then went up. Not super, super high, but it was up really high like that. So that was very, what is our new word, Roger? Synchronicities? Lots of that tonight already.
I've got a recording. It's one of the few that when my computers have been zapped, it's one of the few that I've managed to be able to recover. But
nice.
I've got a we call it a siren call that I got it from this particular one. I got from used to have one that M.K. Davis had come up with somewhere that was just utterly fantastic. It lasted about 40 seconds. This particular one, 35 or 40 seconds. The one I got from a couple of guys up in Kentucky, and it's about 25 seconds, something like that. And I tell you what, as loud as that thing is, I wouldn't have wanted to have been there right there when that recording was made. Right. I mean, it is ungodly loud. It's the second loudest recorded call that I've ever come across. It's the loudest being what we call the Alabama T-Rex call that happened down here in Alabama. That was an answer to one of my calls, and we didn't even have any idea that they were even close. I actually did it being a jerk and just messing with some folks. And what we didn't know was there was an alpha booger standing about 10 feet away from these people that were putting up some tents, standing right behind a big oak tree. And it absolutely, I mean, it totally traumatized 2 families.
Yeah.
When I
Well,
did that was screamed back, and then the female started calling all the little ones to her and leading them off. And, I'm gonna try to play those 2 calls there at the cryptid conference. If I can get my
That'd be
sound system
cool.
together.
Well, that
y'all,
man,
Yeah.
back on the conference, Roger. Man, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, as far as I know, you're gonna have the Squatchin Holler table, and then I'm gonna have the Woodwalkers Night Owl table next to you.
Right.
Coonbo's gonna be speaking. They're gonna have a pretty good lineup of people speaking, I think.
Yep, he's gonna. Your table, Coonbo, will probably be across from us in that line that they put everybody in. The speakers, you
Yeah.
may be close to MK, and so y'all all have your tables. The guy now, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, the guy that analyzed Ron Moorhead's Sierra Sounds, is he going to be there?
Yeah,
You kn-
Scott Nelson, he's supposed to
yeah,
be there. I
yeah,
was looking at the
Okay.
poster, and the lineup that they got there is really good.
yeah.
I'll tell you what,
Well,
there is a deal on, I don't know if it's on I think it's still on the Sierra Sounds, but back when Ron was putting all that together, he gave a few of us from some beta copies of the Sierra Sounds CDs. And boy, there was some wild stuff on that one. I don't know what, I've never listened to the actual one that he's released, but I know on the beta there was.
I heard him
recordings.
I heard him say one time, where people say, well, they're all too clear, whatever. And he said, well, when they put the recordings out for the public, they enhanced it. So, it all sounds the same, sounds closer, but, that I remember the first time hearing that, the first time I ever heard that, I've learned to go with my gut, and it was, I've heard it a million times now. So that effect's gone. But the very first time, was terrifying, because you put yourself in their place, and they've made this makeshift place to sleep in out of logs and whatever. And he said they didn't know whether they're going to come in and kill them or whatever. So
yeah, Roger.
Well, that one, he's carrying on like what Greg was talking about. That you got to realize that was recorded back in the freaking 80s or for sure in the 90s. We had the beta version of Sierra Sounds back in the late 90s, and for them to have that happening, going on right there at them like that, I mean, sounded just like what Greg was describing, all that,
right.
And, I used to call that, when we called it the Tasmanian Devil talk. Now people call it the samurai chatter, but back then the best thing, it sounded like the Taz on Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I remember, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Roger. I had those too, from where I'm sitting, about 1.25 miles due south of where I'm sitting right now. That evening, I was in there deer hunting. I had those 2 walk in on me as one came in, and then about 20 minutes later, another one walked up, went straight to where that one was at. And that one, I could hear it. I heard it pick a log up off the ground and throw it. And that log wound up being about 20 feet long, and it was bigger around than a 5-gallon bucket. That log was at least 20 inches through, and it was an old log, and it picked it up and tossed it. I heard it hit the ground and roll and hit another tree. But I could hear that thing raking through the soft soil under where that log was, and I still believe that the thing was getting worms and grubs under that. But I heard that other one walk bipedal. It walked straight to where that one was. And when it got there with it, man, what I heard would have blew the Sierra Sounds out of the water. I listened to these things for the better part of 10 minutes talking, and I'm talking about less than 100 feet, not yards, but feet from me. And they were just over the crown of the hill. And I was afraid, I was trying to get out of there, and I was afraid if I stood up that they was going to see me. And y'all, I stayed hunkered down and duck walked for probably 40 yards till I got some distance, a little further distance. And then I took off. But y'all, I heard them, and I tell people it was like 100% it was a language. 100% it was a language, but it was more like a foreign language. Like it was part of it was kind of a Native American sound to it, but it was like a lot of times, like when I go order Chinese food that I eat a lot, it's like when the woman writing my order down, she looks around at the dude cooking, and it sounds like she hates him. You know, they're like real sharp and abrupt, and it's loud, and it had a lot of that to it, but it was like a foreign language, and I was hearing the two different voices. It's like when one voice would quit, there wasn't very much of a pause, and you'd hear the other voice, and it was just super quick. Like, I mean, in my mind, it's like they're face to face, mad, and they're arguing. And I'm hearing these two voices, and y'all, it was loud. I don't mean it was like hard for me to hear. No, it was loud, and it was just quick, and it was. But if I'd had any way to record it at y'all, it would have won the internet. And all I was worried about was getting me out of there and me living. I wasn't worried about recording nothing.
Yeah.
I knew I was in a bad way, and I had to be gone. But yeah, but the Sierra sounds, some of that was a lot like what I heard right here. And this is North Alabama, and that was where Colorado, Wyoming, or somewhere out there, wasn't it?
It
Oregon,
was
Yeah.
the Sierra
In the
sounds.
Pacific
It was in
Northwest,
the
most of it.
the Sierra Nevada
Right.
mountains.
It was in.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where
Y'all
the name
look.
came from.
Yeah, I look
I know.
what I heard out here. That I mean, I've heard more than just that, but that it was so close and so loud, y'all. It was absolutely amazing. But it wasn't just like dogs barking at one another. It wasn't just like mumbles. It was more like a language, and it was like a reply, and then a reply to that reply, and it was back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it sounded like, I mean, honestly, I got like, well, that must have been its mate because they are married the way they're acting. That's just the way I felt. But
I just had a
mean,
thought too. I wonder if, because you said it sounded similar to the Sierra sounds, but not exactly right. I wonder if it maybe, if just like us people, especially here in the United States, us down here with our Southern accents and our dialect is a little bit different than, somebody else say in, BC or California even or anything. So
yeah,
it's just a random
actually,
thought I had.
Amanda, it was it would repeat. It was almost like a broke record. It was like it would get stuck on a syllable. It would, and I'll do a horrible impersonation of it. But it was like it would go, oi, 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 hey ya, oi ya ya, oi ya, oi ya. Well, and then the other voice would be different. It'd be real quick, go, oi, 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 hey ya, hi ya, oi ya. And then the other one would go right back, and it was like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back. And I'm sitting there like, well, I mean, you couldn't see it from me right now. Just me doing that, I've got goosebumps broke out everywhere. But I mean, it was, y'all. I'm listening to that in the middle of the woods in the Bankhead National Forest in North Alabama. Stuff like that wasn't supposed to be there.
Right.
And I'm hearing it,
And he's by himself.
yeah, and I'm alone, and I'm 250, 300 yards down the side of a mountain. I got to go back up to get to the truck. And the bad thing, it wasn't gun season. I had a crossbow in my lap, but I also had a 357 Magnum under my arm in a shoulder holster. That before I ever moved, I'd done pulled it out, had it in one hand, a crossbow in the other one, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But y'all, I snuck out of there as softly and quietly as I could. And I'm telling you, I'm 6'1", and I was afraid if I stood completely up, that where these things were, it went out of the green field into the hardwoods, and the hardwoods was really open, but it rounded off the hill down to the river, and they were just over the crown of that hill. And I was absolutely terrified that if I stood up, they was going to at least see the top of my head and go, there's something's not supposed to be there. And that was a traumatic time in my life, because I mean, what I'm heard, it was unreal what I heard. I mean, it was crazy. But I've heard it other times, but never that long and never that loud. It was always, it sounded like a lot further distance. But that, I mean, it was right on top of me.
Well, y'all, we're almost at 2:30, and I the 2:30 hours and 30 minutes. I promised Coonbo we wouldn't go 6 hours this time. And we definitely.
I gotta be in the bed here in about 40 minutes.
All right. Well, we can wrap it up, and will y'all come back sometime?
Awesome.
Greg,
Oh, I reckon.
Coonbo, I reckon.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because now that I've got to meet y'all as much as it can be, I've got to start picking your brains now.
Yeah.
Hey.
So thank y'all for being our first guest on the new platform, and we really appreciate it. Everybody, go check out Woodwalkers and Night Owls. Google Tim Coonbo Baker, and you will have content to watch for months. He's been at this a long time. There's some really good shows he's been on, and we just thank you. I thank y'all, sir.
You can punch in Coonbo Bigfoot or Tim Baker Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
Or just anything, about any way you think of.
Yeah. And I want to personally thank y'all for y'all's help, because y'all have helped me tremendously, like talking, and it's like therapy. And the new people that's been exposed to these two, this is the tip of the iceberg. Go watch some of their stories. And we don't have an outro for tonight. We're just going to end it. Amanda, you can stay with me. We've got some stuff to do afterwards. Greg, you can stay if you want to. Coonbo, get you some sleep, sir, and I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you guys so much for hanging
I'll
out with us
see you here
tonight.
in about. I guess I'll see you here in about 8 days, something like that.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep.
Greg, y'all, if y'all can make it, this is the third year. It's grown every year, and Greg and I had so much fun last year. We've talked about it on shows, and there's a lot of people coming that we know that we're looking forward to seeing, and it's a good time. I'm partial, but I had more fun there than I did at the big one over in Gatlinburg, because I knew more people. So, but anyway,
Roger, I don't know if I told you or not, but right there in chat, there's everybody. I'll say mine, but it's everybody now. It's everybody's Aunt Verby.
Yep.
She's done book rooms. She's done book rooms. Her and her son Barry are going. They'll be there.
We'll have to tell
is really sweet. I love them both.
We'll have to tell the story sometime about she didn't know you knew Coonbo, and she was a big Coonbo fan.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank y'all. Thank you to the new people. Next week, same time, same day, we're going to do Ashley and Amanda's going to be with me. We're going to do a get to know us show, where we come from, some of our stories, and it's going to be really relaxed, and we hope to see y'all then. And thank you so much. We'll see you guys later.
Awesome.
Big
Have
love,
a good
y'all.
night, everybody. Thank y'all very much.
All right. Thank y'all.
See y'all.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.